people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Bit of an opponent change for Canada's own Jessica Camara. Initially, she was supposed to be fighting Priska Vikat, but for one reason or another, there was a falling out between the teams, and Priska will not be moving forward with the fight. In her place will be standing Mexico's own Carla Ramos Zamora.
This is a super lightweight contest.
Super lightweight, that's where Chantel Cameron reigns as that division's undisputed champion. Chantel Cameron, who's going to be in action very soon, opposite the ring, Katie Taylor, who she's wanted to fight for a very long time, and she's finally got her chance.
Yeah.
In the in-between time, Jessica Kamara will be keeping busy with Carla Ramos Zamora. In truth, there's not much difference between the Vikat fight and the Zamora fight.
Nah.
They both keep busy fights.
Perspective is key.
Jessica Kamara has since rebounded off that loss to Kaylee Reese, then unified champion Kaylee Reese in late 2021. She had a productive year in 2022, fought 2 times, won 2 times, and any progress that she makes at 140 pounds, given that there's only one champion,
One fighter's got all the belts.
any progress that Jessica Kamara
Any progress she makes is a step in the direction of that fighter, of that champion, because there's only one, just one, and she's right to do it. The more she fights, the sharper she is. So when a big fight rolls around, she ain't got no ring rust or cobwebs to shake off.
A fighter that's improving fight by fight, sporting a professional record at 10 wins with 3 losses, no draws, 2 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once. Just once.
5 years ago at the hands of Natalie Brown.
A lot has happened since then. Jessica has won some fights, lost some fights, some ups, some downs. You know the business. It's a tough sport.
Jessica Kamara is a tough girl.
She'll be facing Carla Zamora tomorrow night in Canada. Carla, who sports a professional record of 9 wins, 9 losses with 1 draw.
2 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once, just once in 19 professional contests.
You could argue that Carla Zamora is a slightly better choice for Jessica Kamara than Priska Vikat, because Carla Zamora actually beat Priska Vikat some years ago in 2020. She knocked her out in 9 rounds.
So in some ways, it is a better fight.
Still a takeover fight in my eyes, still a keep busy fight, but against a slightly better opponent than what was originally scheduled. Set to go down on the undercard of Jean Pascal versus Michael Eifert, which is going to be shown here in America by way of ESPN Plus tomorrow night.
A fight of some significance. That fight crowns the IBF's mandatory challenger to unified champion Artur Beterbiev, who's currently under orders to face another mandatory challenger by way of another organization in Callum Smith.
Artur's got a full plate tomorrow night. His next mandatory challenger will be crowned when Jean Pascal faces Michael Eifert on that undercard. You're going to see Jessica Kamara, and you're going to see unbeaten Amanda Gaye, unbeaten Carolyn Veer,
Unbeaten up-and-comers that hail from Canada.
I like Jessica Kamara to win the fight on points. I like Jessica Kamara.
Yeah, she's gonna win.
I think she'll make it past Carla Zamora and put distance between herself and that loss to Kaylee Reese over a year ago. I think she's going to be all right.
Now, what she does for the rest of the year, I don't know, because as stated, Chantel Cameron is spoken for. She's busy, and depending on what happens between her and Katie Taylor, that could greatly affect things the rest of the year.
It could, because if Chantel beats Katie, I could see them running it back. I could see an immediate rematch happening later on this year. Or what if Katie beats Chantel? The question then becomes, is Katie going to stay at 140, or will she drop the belts and move back down?
Questions that need answers.
Every step forward that Jessica Kamara takes in this division is a step in the direction of the winner of that fight.
So you know.
But now Jessica is doing the right thing. She's going to keep busy tomorrow night. I like Jessica Kamara to win on points in Canada on the undercard of Pascal versus Eifert. In men's light heavyweight news, further insights into Joshua Buatsi's decision to change his decorum in more ways than one. Joshua Buatsi has left 258 management and signed a managerial contract with the newly founded Ringside Sports. The company seems to be a joint venture between Amir Khan, his manager Mazar Majid, and David Hyde.
Hey.
He didn't just leave Matchroom and DAZN, he left 258 management as well, who was managing him up until this point.
This is a sophisticated duck. I don't care how you slice it. And I don't care what he says about there not being enough eyes on the DAZN platform. The money was real enough.
The fights were real enough, the fighters were real enough, and that's the real reason that he left.
Frank Warren's saying, do you know what, there was a quote that I saw from him saying that he's disappointed about it because now the yard fight can't happen. It's like it wasn't a one-off fight that I said no to. The thing is, people need to understand there's so much more that comes with these offers that are presented to us as fighters. Recently, I read that I turned down a meal to fight Bivol. It wasn't fight Bivol in a one-off fight for $1 million, yes or no, and I said no. There's so much more that came with it. So I said, you know what, that's not going to benefit me as an athlete. So I turned it down. I said no.
It sounds a lot like what Joshua Buatsi's talking about is a standard deal in the event you're facing a champion, in the event you're facing a Dmitry Bivol on a Matchroom or an Artur Beterbiev on a top rank.
A standard deal if you win.
That if you win, that promoter is going to have options on you moving forward, which in this situation would have extended Joshua Buatsi's tenure on Matchroom and DAZN.
Joshua Buatsi himself was quoted as saying, what were the caveats? You end up signing an extension of another 2 to 3 years at this channel you don't want to be on. This guy will say anything he wants to say. I couldn't care less.
And that's what the fight fans themselves might be saying, depending on who you're opposite the ring moving forward.
Let's get this clear. What they offered Joshua Buatsi for that Bivol fight was a standard deal.
That's saying that any other promoter would have played it the same way. And the truth of it is, you didn't really want that Bivol fight.
But you know what? I could have forgiven. I actually could have, if he would have fought Callum Smith.
But you didn't want Bivol, you didn't want Smith, you don't want Yard either.
You want to be on Easy Street. You want to be on Easy Street, away from all the action and all the top fighters over there on Sky Sports, while you give them time to build up a Dan Aziz fight. Dan Aziz, who is a domestic level prospect.
I said it in my last video, I'm saying it again here and now. This guy's moving backwards.
A look backwards, a look back in time. Hindsight being 2020.
The quote-unquote injury that Joshua Buatsi suffered ahead of what was supposed to be the Maxim Vlasov fight. A very dangerous fight at that time, in my opinion. I felt like Maxim Vlasov stood a good chance of beating Joshua Buatsi. And as luck would have it, Joshua was injured and pulled out. So you didn't have the Vlasov fight. You didn't have the Pascal fight.
That fell apart too.
Reportedly due to a discrepancy about the anti-doping testing in association with the match. But you didn't have the Vlasov fight, didn't have the Pascal fight.
You just admitted you turned down the Bivol fight, the Smith fight, and the Yard fight.
The Bivol fight was for a purse of over $1 million. You do realize that they're offering you the kind of money that unified light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev makes, and you're expecting them to do this?
What's your best win, Craig Richards? They're offering you what Artur makes for a fight.
They're offering you a title shot, and you don't want it. You're just trying to find different ways to justify that, different ways to say it, that you didn't want that Bivol fight.
You're just trying to find different ways of saying you don't want to do what's expected of you. You being an Olympic amateur standout that actually medaled in the Olympics, being in your early 30s.
My contract came to an end. We entered a matching right period where they had to match an offer from a third party, which I gave in, and not all the points were matched, not all the materials were matched, and it's like, okay, you couldn't match it, no worries. I have to go somewhere else where there's an opportunity for me to be viewed by a lot more people in England. And a question I've asked everyone, Rob, is who has the biggest platform in the country? I'm asking, this is a question to you. Okay, and as a fighter, as an athlete, as a performer, I want to be seen by the most people. So I said to myself, where should I be? Where should I be fighting? These fights that I'm going to have, where should it be? Sky Sports was the answer.
Don't make it about the viewership on DAZN. Don't make it about the metrics, because the money is real enough.
Shouldn't that be your biggest concern?
It's real enough for Canelo Alvarez, the face of boxing in America. It's real enough for Anthony Joshua. Has been real enough for him, and he's a bigger draw than you are.
The money's real enough. You're just not up for the challenge.
So let's just call a spade a spade.
You want comparable money for lighter touches. You want comparable money for softer opponents. That's what it is.
Big up. They came in, gave me a good offer that I couldn't refuse. And like I said, respectfully, I showed it to my previous promoters. They couldn't match everything, so I was like, all right, you couldn't match it. Thank you. It's been nice. Like you said, we worked together for 5 years or so, but it was time to move on.
Elsewhere in the light heavyweight division, per a tweet from Michael Benson, the WBC have now officially ordered Artur Beterbiev to defend his WBC, IBF, and WBO light heavyweight world titles versus Callum Smith next. Parties have until April 11th to agree to a deal, then purse bids.
This is not the fight that I wanted.
Last we heard in reference to Artur Beterbiev was that his team was in talks to face Dmitry Bivol this summer over there in the Middle East, and that bit of information actually came from the Artur Beterbiev side of things.
It was somebody on his side that said that.
We talked about it here on the channel. That was welcome news, because from where I'm sitting, Bivol versus Beterbiev is the only fight to make for an aging fighter, an aging champion like Artur, who's pushing 40 and needs a big fight, needs a big payday.
What are they going to do? They're going to have this guy satisfying mandatory challenges well into his 40s?
Apparently, the Artur Beterbiev side of things needs that Bivol fight more than Bivol needs that Artur fight, because Bivol's got Canelo.
Potential Canelo Alvarez rematch. And if nothing else, Dmitry Bivol is several years younger than Artur. Time is on his side.
Top Rank's not doing him any favors, not prioritizing the Bivol fight over these mandatory challengers, this proliferation of mandatory challengers that range from Callum Smith to the winner of tomorrow night's fight between John Pascal and Michael Eifert.
What's the play?
I think Matchroom is going to want the rights to this fight just as much as Top Rank, and I think there's a chance it could end up going to purse bid.
I think that Uncle Bob is going to work with Uncle Frank, and he wants to let Uncle Frank do the show in the United Kingdom, so he'll try and subsidize the effort, help him get the rights to the fight.
I think the play from the Top Rank side of things is to outsource Artur Beterbiev once again. He just fought in the United Kingdom. He'll likely fight there again against Callum Smith, and it's just a question of who's going to promote the show. Is it going to be Frank Warren by way of Queensberry and BT, should they win the rights, or will it be Matchroom?
One way for Matchroom to secure the rights to the fight is to have their buddies over there in the Middle East subsidize the effort in order to bring that fight to that region of the world and stage it as part of their Champions Series. That was the plan for the Bivol versus Beterbiev fight.
In theory, at least, it could be the plan for the Beterbiev versus Smith fight if they're still interested in doing a fight between Artur and somebody else.
If they're not, they'll just ship off Callum Smith over to Queensberry and hope for the best.
Same way they did with John Ryder. When it came to John Ryder and Zach Parker, well, it worked out for John, didn't it? It lined him up for a Canelo Alvarez fight that he's about to have.
But this is a much dicier situation for Callum Smith than Zach Parker was for John Ryder. This is a dicier situation for Callum because this is the strongest finisher in this entire weight class, the most destructive puncher by and large.
This is a very dangerous fight that he stands a very good chance of losing. If he were to win, if he were to actually pull this off,
Do this fight. Win it.
become this division's unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion, well, that'd be a big win for Matchroom, and that could, in theory, give them full agomonical control of this weight class, of this division, and all the belts, provided that Callum Smith still is a Matchroom fighter.
And to my knowledge, he still is.
Which point, they could do the fight between Callum Smith, the newly crowned unified champion, and Dmitry Bivol.
That's if Callum wins. If Callum loses,
Artur wins, the division stays divided, and we continue to play the waiting game, hoping that someday when Artur's not too fucking old, he'll share the ring with Dmitry.
so by the time they do this fight between Artur and Callum, the next mandatory challenger, the winner of Pascal versus Eifert, will already be in the queue by way of the IBF.
We're right back where we started. Needless to say, this is not the fight that I wanted to see Artur Beterbiev in. I wanted to see him in the Bivol fight, but it just is what it is.
What can I do?
As far as the fight itself, I do favor Artur Beterbiev to win the fight and win the fight by way of knockout. I'm not convinced, not even with Buddy McGirt. in Callum Smith's corner that he can keep Artur at arm's length. I feel like Artur's going to get inside.
Callum Smith would have a height advantage and a reach advantage over Artur Beterbiev.
But he had those same advantages over John Ryder, who many people feel unofficially beat him. John Ryder is a smaller, compact fighter, as was Canelo Alvarez.
These are both much smaller guys than Callum Smith, and Callum wasn't able to keep him at arm's length. He wasn't able to keep them on the outside. They both got inside on him.
Artur Beterbiev is a bigger puncher and a bigger guy than the both of those guys, even if he's somewhat shorter than Callum Smith.
But if Callum Smith couldn't keep those fighters at arm's length, I find it hard to imagine he'll be able to do that with Artur when Artur has a lot more power than they do. You will recall that in the Canelo Alvarez fight, Callum Smith gave Canelo Alvarez's punch a lot of respect, and he spent a good portion of that fight just shelling up, trying not to get hit clean.
That's the kind of respect that Canelo Alvarez's power elicited from Callum. What kind of respect will Artur's power elicit from Callum?
Now, I've heard the argument made several times that Callum Smith's got a quality left hook, a short left hook mid-range to inside, that if it lands, could take out Artur Beterbiev, and I don't dismiss that possibility.
Yeah, anything's possible, but more often than not, at that range, mid-range to inside, it's Artur Beterbiev running the show. It's Artur Beterbiev piling up the points and piling on the damage.
I don't trust Callum in the pocket more than I trust Artur. Even if Callum does have a decent short left hook, a counter left hook mid-range to inside,
At that range?
that's Artur's sweet spot.
You know, this ain't Matthew Bowder Leak we're talking about here. This is Artur Beterbiev, the strongest finisher in this division.
And he's proven over time that he's more than just a brawler, more than just a mauler. He's craftier than people give him credit for.
The way he gets within striking distance of his opponent, letting go of short jabs, doubling up and tripling up on the jab.
He's a two-handed puncher. He can hurt you with either hand.
His shot selection, the variety of punches that Artur throws, whether you're talking about a chopping overhand right or an uppercut up the middle that splits the guard. Artur has a lot of different ways that he can hurt you.
A chopping overhand right over the top of the jab, or an uppercut up the middle, couple of body shots.
Now listen, it's not a knock on Callum Smith. There are actually quite a few guys in today's light heavyweight division that I think Callum Smith can beat. I think he could beat Anthony Yard. I think he could beat Joshua Buatsi, Craig Richards.
I think he could beat Joe Smith Jr.
But not Artur. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced because Callum's best bet to do this guy is mid-range to inside, but mid-range to inside, that's where he'd be in the most danger. I don't think for a second he can keep Artur out.
A big part of what makes Artur so dangerous is he's a two-handed puncher with power in either hand who can actually box.
He's not one of these guys that has to load up his punches in order to put something on them.
Punches just flow.
They don't seem to have to travel very far in order to inflict optimal damage. You're talking about an accurate puncher who don't even need much room to throw. I don't like Callum's chances in this fight.
Even if he does, and he's supposed to. He's the fighter.
Myself, I think he gets knocked out.
He gets stopped.